The skies of North America were flooded by strange airships in the late 1890s. They were seen by thousands of people and have inspired much speculation as to their origin and nature ever since. First reported in Canada in 1896, they then showed up above Sacramento, California in December of that year and began a slow navigation across the United States throughout 1897. A similar aerial flotilla was seen in Great Britain in May 1909, which gained the name of scare ships, mostly considered to be German spies by those who glimpsed them. Then the airship suddenly appeared on the other side of the world, crisscrossing the islands of New Zealand in July and August of 1909. All three of these mass sightings have been well chronicled by researchers of strange aerial phenomena. Not as well known outside of ufologist groups was that airships and other strange objects were noticed in Australia during 1909 also. The first reported sighting came from a Mr. J. O. Rigby of Bairnsdale, Victoria, who said he had seen an object at about 11 p.m. on the 16th of July 1909. It was a dark object with a light in the front and another at the back, high in the night sky, moving in a northeasterly direction. Rigby's son, who was with him, said from their vantage point one light appeared the size of a dinner plate, while the other was the size of a saucer. Rigby and his son watched the object for about 15 minutes before the lights suddenly disappeared from view. On the 24th of July, at Snug River, Tasmania, 3 men were walking along the Snug River Road at 10:15 p.m. when they saw what they at first took to be an illuminated boat steaming up the harbour. They then realised it was in the sky. One of the men was more alarmed than the others at the sight and ran home. When he reached his family, he found they too had seen the light, and being more elevated had seen it apparently rise from Bruny Island, high into the air, then descend, rise again, and then move left to right. They watched it, thinking it would fade away at any moment, but the light was still visible at 2 a.m. In August, the sighting of strange lights in the nocturnal heavens was being termed a craze, although some people were presumably gazing at stars and thinking they had seen one of the fabled airships. There were a lot of odd reports being made. On the 1st of August, locals at Collow Vale, looking towards Wollongong in New South Wales, saw a moving light high up, manoeuvring as if under some control. It was seen again at 9 o'clock on the 4th, and again on the 7th and 8th it was seen ascending and definitely being directed by some power. One man watched it from 9 p.m. until midnight, when it was directly over Collow Vale. A railway official said it was still in sight at 12:30 a.m. On the 5th and 6th of August, a bright moving light was seen at Goulburn, New South Wales. Mr. J. F. Francis and his son saw the light on Friday the 6th at North Goulburn, travelling over Governor's Hill toward the basin. On the 8th of August, the light was seen by a group, including 15-year-old William Reynolds, near Governor's Hill for a quarter of an hour. Reynolds said it was the apparent size of a carriage lantern. At 10:30, William's brother Walter, who was with 2 other young men near the North Goulburn railway station, when they saw the light, described as pale blue and very bright, rise up from behind Governor's Hill, ascend rapidly and then return the way it had come. 2 friends out walking near Narrabri on the evening of the 8th of August at 9:30 observed a light which was estimated to be about 1,500 feet high, glowing with 50 candle power and moving at a fast rate. The light was attached to a large white body like an airship or aeroplane. It circled the back of the town, paused for 30 seconds, and then went straight ahead toward the nearby village of Dangar. As it moved towards Dangar, a searchlight played out ahead. After 10 minutes, it disappeared. The light did, however, reappear at Narrabri on the 9th and the 10th. The locals were mystified, and many stopped up all night hoping to get a glimpse of the stranger. On the 9th of August, the light was seen again at Goulburn at 7:30 p.m. On the 11th, a light was seen by a group near Goulburn, which a constable was able to identify as a railway signal. Back in Tasmania that night, mysterious lights were seen by Miss Hilda Hines and her brother as they travelled from Penguin to Rihanna. At Cemetery Hill at 10:30 at night, they saw 3 lights, one brighter than the rest, straight out to sea. Miss Hines thought they may be lights on ships, but her brother pointed out they were too far above sea level and too close to shore for that. People at Ulverston also glimpsed the lights that night. A Mr. W.G. Baker of Lefroy, Tasmania, had had his attention drawn to a light in the sky by a lady at about 8:30 p.m. on the 4th of August. The sky was clear and bespangled. The object looked like a cluster of electric lights, continually ascending and descending in the south. It gradually travelled east over the course of an hour. Another witness said it was still visible at 11:30 p.m, when it had diminished to the size of a small loaf of bread. Lights were seen over Tasmania on the 12th of August at Launceston and Hobart. At the former place, 2 bright stars were seen travelling at a remarkable rate from the southwest to the west. At one point, the lights paused over St. John's Street. 2 hours after being seen at Launceston, the light was spotted at Hobart. At Launceston, the light was so bright it reflected off the sea, while at Hobart the lights were seen, as was often reported, to sway. Also on the 12th, at Zeehan, Tasmania, shortly after 7 o'clock, 2 brilliant white lights travelling rapidly northwest against the wind. As they travelled, one appeared to grow smaller, while the other grew larger. They disappeared behind clouds. Around the same time at Ulverston, an airship with 2 bright lights attached was watched by a number of residents for 15 minutes before it flew off to the west. A Mr. Wood observed lights on the 12th and 14th of August at Prialena, a small settlement near Wynyard, Tasmania, with the aid of a 5-inch theodolite. On the first occasion, they appeared in the constellation Virgo and travelled close together at high speed. On the latter occasion, they appeared in Coma Berenices and were 12 times further apart. Mr. Wood made the technical observation that the lights travelled through an arc of 4 degrees, 10 minutes and 40 seconds in 16 minutes of time, in hopes it would help determine a solution to the mystery. From the northern Tasmanian Penguin district came reports of 2 lights, one white and one yellow, which viewed through a telescope showed them to be orbs. They gradually disappeared to the northwest. Also from northern Tasmania at this time came a report of the Aurora Australis being seen, which becomes increasingly intriguing later in the year. The Tabart family at Colebrook, Tasmania, witnessed strange lights around 8 o'clock on the 21st of August, which remained for about an hour, low over the hills in the southeast. Viewed through a telescope, they were seen to be attached to a dark object, which at times seemed shaped like the numeral 8, and at other times like an umbrella. From Victoria came a sighting over the Dandenong Ranges on the night of the 7th of August. Reverend B. Cozzens was spending the weekend at a farmhouse at Eltham. On going outside at about 10 p.m, he saw half a mile up in the sky 2 revolving lights which slowed down, dipped and rose again. They then changed from white to red and then to blue. The clergyman called his wife and 3 neighbours, and the group watched until midnight, by which time one had almost moved out of sight over the ranges. Cozzens went back out at 2 a.m. and checked the sky. The second light was by now almost over the range, while 5 more appeared in the distance, moving in the direction taken by the other 2. Lights were also seen at Fitzroy, Victoria, on the 7th. A letter writer named M. Eyre said they were retiring to bed at 10 p.m, when through the eastwards facing window saw a bright star, which looked as if it was made of 2 or 3 sparkling lights. The witness watched the lights for half an hour before going to sleep. Another letter was sent to inform the press that residents at North Malvern in Melbourne had seen a light on 4 different nights. 2 lights, one large and the other smaller, were reported from Long Gully, Bendigo, on the 12th of August. While they may have been Jupiter and Venus misidentified, the report attempts to rationalise the sighting by saying it might have been lightning or some type of phosphoric glow liberated by recent rains, which suggests some quality of the light was abnormal. A number of residents of Moss Vale in New South Wales came out of their houses into Main Street to witness a large aerial body bearing a bright light to the southeast of the town on the evening of the 9th of August. People lined up the entity with fixed objects and determined that it was in motion. Most opinion was that it was either an airship or a large balloon. An object was noticed about a mile east of Helensburgh, New South Wales, at 10 p.m. on the 10th of August, moving northerly. The light kept varying in intensity from brilliant to invisible and was plainly seen to sway about at times. Again, on the 10th of August, a passenger on the 6:50 Picton passenger train saw two bright lights with a slight orange colour. The lower of the pair was the size of a small moon, and a little to the west of the higher light. They travelled slowly north by northwest and later direct north. The witness, a Mr. Nicol, thought they may be fire balloons, sent aloft by pranksters. A light was seen to rise, apparently from near the southern boundary of the National Park, for several nights at about 11 p.m. Although this was dismissed as a particularly bright star, it would rise rapidly to a great height and disappear by midnight. At times it was so powerful, illuminated, that it could not be looked at for too long. Passengers on the Melbourne Express travelling between Mittagong and Wollongong saw a strange lighted object on two successive nights. A large, moving bright light was seen several miles away, near the coast, at an estimated height of 2,000 feet. A very bright light with smaller lights underneath was seen southeast of Broken Hill on the 12th of August, which had disappeared by 11:30 p.m, but had reappeared again early the following morning. The airships reached Western Australia mid-August as well. On August the 14th at Pingelly, an airship displaying red and green lights passed over the town, heading west, seen by a dozen locals. On the same day in the early morning at Victoria Park, a suburb of Perth, 3 people saw an airship equipped with powerful lights. One man claimed it was close to the ground when he first saw it, and he saw a man on board pulling on a lever, which caused the airship to rise quickly and disappear out of sight. A number of people grabbed telescopes and went out to scan the skies, claiming they could see coloured lights turning above. Astronomers claimed the witnesses were being tricked by a conjunction of Venus and Jupiter, which was shining brightly in the western sky at this time. Stories continued to circulate despite newspapers laughing off the reports. A lady at Claremont, Perth, claimed that an airship had approached so closely to her house that her husband yelled out to the object to be careful not to hit the chimneys. Remarkably, he was answered by a string of words in a language neither of them could discern. Wilfred Gull, who owned a property called Southampton near Ballingup, wrote to his father about a sighting made on the 14th of August. Gull had been to see some friends and stayed until about midnight, when he rode home. A bright light suddenly appeared in the sky and came closer and closer until he could see it was a long, dark object which hovered above him. Watching it ascend closer, he felt uneasy and turned his horse around and rode back to his friend's residence. Once there, he roused them and invited them outside to observe the strange visitor. The group were able to watch it until 3 o'clock in the morning, moving about in different directions and at different heights. Then it vanished back into the night. On the 19th of August, a newspaper claimed jokers had used box kites and some coloured lights to concoct the whole saga. Although the article said a detective had caught a prankster in the act, no details such as name or location was provided. Previously, advertising balloons had been blamed. The Queensland Times of the 3rd of September belatedly published a report that a schoolboy at a college in the Hornsby area of Sydney had been sending up balloons, carrying lights, exciting the interest of his fellow scholars and the local folk. He was caught out by a sceptical teacher. Back east in New South Wales, a visitor appeared in the evening sky at Murwillumbah several times between the 4th and 12th of August, usually appearing around 9 p.m. It failed to show on the 13th, but the appearances had excited local interest and a watch was being kept. If the mystery lights were not at Murwillumbah, they were certainly busy elsewhere that night. Also on the 12th at Bathurst, a light which sometimes had a bluish hue was seen at about 9 o'clock, floating in an easterly direction. Later, it was seen going southerly. The following night from Bathurst came a report of a light which came from the east between 9 and 10 and slowly moved westerly. At midnight it was directly above the town. It was described as a star of unusual lustre. Viewed through a telescope it appeared as an oblong lantern with red, white and blue light. Two enormous stars were seen at Narromine on the 11th of August. They were first glimpsed about 6 p.m. when the brighter one was about 100 yards behind the other light. By the time they disappeared, there was only a gap of a few yards between them. The larger light had a bright red tint. The next night they again appeared and were abreast of each other when they vanished from view. They both reappeared on the 13th of August, very close together, travelling from the northwest to the west. Due to the regularity of the appearances, this was possibly a sighting of Mars and a star. A light shone at Cundletown on the Manning River on Friday the 13th of August. At 6:30 p.m, a light which had the appearance of a huge electric arc light, rather than that of a star, appeared in the southwest. About 20 feet beneath was a smaller, less brilliant light. Both lights slowly drifted further southwest and then suddenly disappeared in the direction of Wingham at 7:30 p.m. Other sightings on the 13th of August were made at Goulburn. A large bright star was seen which remained for hours. Eyewitnesses dismissed suggestions it was a balloon, a kite with a light attached, or an airship. General opinion was that it was the planet Mars, which at the time was visible in the eastern sky. Mars was then 42 million miles from Earth and came to within 35 million miles at its closest approach on the 24th of September that year. A witness named Mr. E.A. Windsor wrote to the Scone Advocate to inform them of a sighting he made on the 13th, which he said was definitely not Mars, as he identified the planet in the east, lower down and less brilliant than the light he saw. The light he saw at 10 p.m. was high in the northeast sky. For an hour the light would glow brightly, then dim and disappear for about 20 seconds, before slowly re-illuminating. The light was also seen to distinctly sway. It then remained stationary from 11 p.m. until 11:30, after which Mr. Windsor did not see it again. A light was seen very low to the horizon at Balmain at 9 p.m. At first thought to be a light on a ship's mast, it rose high into the sky and swayed about. At 10 past 10 it suddenly grew smaller and faded out in 15 seconds. It reappeared for a couple of seconds and went out again. In the coastal suburbs of Sydney, lights were clearly seen in the northwest between 7 and 8. After several sharp moves to the east, the lights disappeared to the south. At Stanfield, a railway night officer who was operating the signals saw a bright light near the ground some distance away. He had not heard about the mysterious lights and thought one of the signal lights was glowing especially bright for some reason. Thomas Apps and several others saw a mysterious light in the west at 7:30 p.m. from the Breadalbane Hotel. At Sutherland on the 13th, a bluish light was seen to ascend from the east and then circle out for 20 minutes, after which it veered off to the southwest and kept going until out of sight. The Goulburn Evening Penny Post remarked that the airship theory was not entertained at Sutherland, but infuriatingly did not say what explanation was popular. Another paper carrying the same story did, however, mention that at Goulburn the airship theory was likewise losing in favour to the lights being stars or some other astronomical body. Those who did think that airships were buzzing the skies seemed to think they originated in Japan. One of the most provocative reports from the 13th came from Glen Innes, where a light spotted north of the town at 11 p.m. was looked at through a telescope. The object was then seen to be shaped like an inverted top. The lower half was lighted, and as the body revolved, a bright light, like a small flashlight, kept turning onto the land beneath. The upper portion was in darkness. The object drifted away in a northerly direction. A light described as a large lantern suspended in the western sky was noticed at Tumut between 7 and 8 p.m. on the 14th of August. On the same night, two luminous orbs travelled in a straight line from east to west across the sky between 7:15 and 7:30 at Fairfield. At Narrabri that night, the light was observed through a telescope which revealed the light was actually a combination of purple and bright lights, with a smaller light ahead apparently affixed to what was thought to be a balloon. It crossed the sky from the northeast to the south. On the 14th and 15th, a bright light was seen in the evening from the main street of Wollongong. On the 15th of August, Carcoar was the scene of a sighting which lasted for an hour and 50 minutes. At 8:50 p.m, low in the south, a light was noticed which appeared like a lantern seen through the trees, but as it rose higher, appeared like a bright star, casting a glow as bright as moonlight on the clouds, which sometimes obscured it. The light slowly moved to the southeast, then to the east, until it finally disappeared in the northeast. On the 15th of August, the Sunday Times newspaper reported that lights had been seen all over the state of New South Wales, at Sydney, Sutherland, Cobar, Murwillumbah, Moss Vale, Hay, Tumut, Fairfield and Broken Hill. The newspapers generally reported the lights matter-of-factly, although sometimes added snide details about people forgetting their babies and climbing onto roofs to gape at the celestial wonders. One account mentioned a thunderous collision between two lights at Bulli, New South Wales, in early August, but then went on to say a telescope revealed a light on the 15th to be an alien world with giant beings trying to signal Earth, one of which even seemed to attempt to leap from its planet to Earth. This ridicule failed to end reports. A brilliant red light was seen from Wellington, New South Wales on the 16th of August in the eastern sky at night. Also on the 16th, a Miss Whedon of the Crookwell Public School saw a light she said was like a motorcar headlight, shining steadily at 7:30 p.m, which rose above the hills in the west and travelled along the horizon for 10 minutes before disappearing behind Binder Hill in the northwest. A Mr. Edward Power wrote a letter at this time which was published in the Sydney Star newspaper, the 17th of August edition. Referring to a sighting when a beam of bright light streamed down into the living room of a home with enough brilliance to enable reading for 2 or 3 minutes, he theorised that the airships were powered by radium. He went on to wonder that there had not yet been an atomic disaster, with what he termed these foreign warlike aeroplanes. While some people were in awe of the lights, others took them in their stride. A bright yellow light hanging below a dimly luminous body was seen at 8:30 p.m. on the 17th of August at Darlinghurst, Sydney. It rose into the air, wriggled about for some time, then floated in the direction of Bradley's Head. Among the onlookers was a policeman, whose mouth was agape in wonder. A remark was made to him by an individual that as a policeman he should move the light on. Instead, the light gradually faded out. Tenterfield was the next town visited on the 18th of August, between 6:50 and 7:15 p.m. Lights were seen at 23 degrees above the horizon to the south, over Sandy Flat, or further south. At first appearing blurry, they soon resolved into 2 beams shining out, one to the left and one to the right, from a darker central spot. They flickered and moved about while moving off to the south and slightly to the east. The observer, Mr. Seabrook, ventured his opinion that as astronomers were planning to signal to Mars on its close approach to Earth, that possibly Martians were already doing the same, which the Tenterfield newspaper thought was a feasible opinion. Seabrook also saw a red meteor fall on an irregular course in the eastern sky at 8:55 the same night, which he did not believe had any connection to the earlier lights he saw. A light described as like a comet without a tail, or a gigantic will-o'-the-wisp dancing up and down, was allegedly sighted at Gobaralong. The account is reported facetiously, but appears based on a real event. A man went outside to shoo a noisy cat when he saw the light and then alerted the rest of the small town, who filed out of their homes to catch a glimpse of the oddity. At Gundagai, the local newspaper reported on the 20th of August that a few days earlier 2 government officials had seen a glow in the western sky, and thinking a house was on fire went to render assistance, before they discovered it was in the sky. Most likely this was a manifestation of the aurora. On the 21st of August, a newspaper claimed a young man at Manila, New South Wales, had seen a mystery light during the past week. It was a fine, cloudless night at Bathurst on the 22nd of August, when many of the town's inhabitants were filled with wonder by the sight of a fiery star traversing the sky at 7 p.m. It appeared from the northeast and moved at a rapid rate before suddenly turning to the east, making its path a semicircle and disappearing after 5 minutes, leaving a dark red haze in its wake. W.A. Fearn wrote to the West Australian to detail a sighting made at 9:10 p.m. on the 24th of August. The witness was at East Fremantle and saw a bright light with a dark object at the centre coming from Woodman's Point towards Perth. Fearn estimated it was moving at a speed of 160 miles per hour. The writer had been watching the papers hoping to see an explanation published and had been moved to correspond when nothing had been mentioned in print. A small globe of light rose from the earth in the direction of Cronulla, as seen from Bexley and Carlton area, early in the evening of the 28th of August. The light reached a great height in the sky, before descending again. A structured craft, described as a large three-winged apparatus, passed over Dorrigo, New South Wales at about noon on the 1st of September. It hovered and seemed about to descend, but then veered slightly and went west out of sight. The Dorrigo sighting was unusual in two ways. The reports had uniformly been of nocturnal lights in Australia, although craft had been seen in daylight hours in New Zealand. And secondly, with that sighting, the scareships seemed to abandon their fascination for Australia. But while reports ebbed away in Australia, the Leader newspaper of the 9th of October mentioned in passing that scareships had been seen recently flying through the night sky, flashing their lights in Germany and also Russia, which had been visited by strange airships before in 1892. Strangely, as the reports of lights ceased, the Aurora Australis flared into beautiful prominence. At Coolangatta, the aurora was briefly prominent for a few seconds around 6:30 p.m. on the 25th of September. It then returned that same night between 10 and 11 and persisted until midnight. Whether reports of people being panic-stricken and praying for salvation at the site have any basis in fact is doubtful. On the 26th of September, the aurora put on another display at Mudgee, beginning about 11 p.m. Green, white and pale purple lights appeared and faded until finally the sky took on a rich red glow until midnight. The aurora returned between 3 and 4 in the early morning, when the sky took on a blood-red hue with streamers of white, purple and green. Similar reports of the aurora came in from across New South Wales, from Orange, Wollongong, Brewarrina, Dubbo, Albury, Broken Hill, Trundle, Bathurst, Moree, Hay, Narrandera, Wellington and Tamworth. Described as streamers, flashes, cloudlets and arches of multicoloured light. The descriptions of the auroral lights and their behaviour was markedly different from the mystery lights reported the previous month. From Sydney to Perth, the light show could be seen, peaking at 4:20 a.m. on the 27th of September. The southern lights were seen as far north as Brisbane. The auroral display seen over Adelaide was said to be probably the best ever seen from that city by Antarctic explorer Douglas Mawson. Which again is strange, as no mystery lights seem to have been seen at all in Adelaide in that winter of strange lights. Normally aurora cannot be seen from Australia. Even a 9 kp, the maximum strength event for such phenomena, only just reaches southern Australia. It was claimed some people even became hysterical on seeing the light displays in the sky. Another vivid refulgence occurred early in October. Oddly, no reports of airships or lights came from South Australia other than the aurora during the airship flap in the winter and spring of 1909. The only possible report came months later on the 4th of December. At midnight, a light like a ship's distress rocket was seen to rise into the sky between Penguin Island and Robe. No ship had been sighted in the area by any of the harbour masters along the coast, and was rationalised as a meteor. What the strange lights and mystery objects were, where they came from, and what they were doing floating through the lonely skies of Australia was, of course, never resolved. Whether the scareships and the aurora were connected, and if so, in what manner, remains another curious mystery in the dark corners of history.